We're going to begin now. We apologize for the delay. I'd like to have our league president welcome you.
Yes, Linda Benson. Just want to welcome everyone here tonight, and we're also giving our pitch to make sure that all of you know that next year in 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the signing of the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote. So the league is going to be doing a lot of different activities that'll all be free for everybody. So we want you to make sure that you watch for all of that. Thank you for coming tonight. Vicci Ruden is our moderator, so I'll just turn it over to her.
Thank you, Linda. Good evening and welcome to all of you, and thank you for coming tonight. As Linda said, my name is Vicci Ruden. You've seen me do these shows before, and I'll be moderating this evening's forum that features candidates for Port Angeles City Council positions 5 and 7. Our timers are Lindsay Schroman-Warren and Elaine Baker. They're right down here in the front row, and everyone should keep their eye on them. Candidates at first, and then you in the audience when we get to the question and answer period. Please turn off your cell phones and other devices that make noise. No photography, audio, or video recording devices of any kind are permitted during this forum unless you've already received permission from us. Tim Bry, our videographer, is recording this event. We'll have a link to the recording posted on the League's website within the next few days. You can find links to the recordings of our 2 previous forums already there. Just go to our League website, which you can see on your agenda and on the bottom line of the banner up there. And please let your friends, relatives, neighbors who aren't here know that they can view this forum online. Note that the restrooms are in the lobby behind us to the right as you leave this room. In case of emergency, please exit through the doors at the back of the room and then out to the lobby. To make the most of our time, I'll ask you to refrain from applauding or making any other noises which in any way interrupt our speakers. I'll be sure to give you a chance at the end of the forum to give a round of applause to the candidates. Before we begin, another word about the League of Women Voters. The League is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose purpose is to provide and promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Our goal for tonight's forum is to provide local citizens with the information to help them be informed and knowledgeable voters. You can find more information about the League at the membership table that is in the lobby, or by going to our website, which you can see on the banner. And also note as you leave that there is a jar out there that welcomes your donations if you aren't already a League member or want to do something to further support us. Also, if you didn't get one of these as you came in, we're asking you to complete an evaluation form. Now, does anyone need an agenda? On to the forum. The Port Angeles City Council is made up of 7 members elected at large for 4-year terms. The council is the legislative and policy-making body of the city, adopting all ordinances and resolutions, approving contracts, and the annual budget. Individual council members represent the city on local and regional boards and commissions. The salary for city council members is currently $550 a month. 3 of the 7 seats on the council will be filled by newly elected members this coming November. We'll present a single panel this evening with the candidates for positions 5 and 7 that will appear on your August 6th primary ballot. Under Washington's top 2 primary system, the top 2 vote getters in each of these races will advance automatically to the general election on November 5th. Only 2 candidates filed to run for position 6, so that race will not appear on your primary ballot. It's the League of Women Voters' practice to hold forums only for primary races where there are 3 or more candidates. However, just last week, after this forum was scheduled and after ballots had been printed, one of the candidates for position 7 withdrew. Therefore, we are continuing with the forum as originally planned. Because all of the candidates are running for seats on the same council, and council members will be facing the same issues and the same challenges, we're putting them all on the panel together. In the order they filed for the position, we'll ask each candidate to make an opening statement of no more than 3 minutes. Following the opening remarks, you, the audience, are invited to be part of this forum by asking your questions. You will have 30 seconds to ask your question, and the candidates will have 1 minute to answer. Please keep the time limit in mind when crafting your question. League volunteers have index cards and pencils for you so you can write down your questions in advance if that is helpful to you. You may address your question to a particular candidate or to all candidates. However, all candidates will be given the opportunity to answer all questions. We'll give everyone in the audience the chance to ask a question before taking follow-ups or multiple questions from the same person. We will close the forum by giving each candidate up to 1 minute for closing remarks, and this will happen in the reverse order in which they filed. We've asked the candidates to introduce themselves by covering the following information in their 3 minutes or less opening statements. What should voters know about you as a candidate for City Council? What do you see as the major issue facing Port Angeles, and how do you plan to address it? Candidates, please keep your eyes on the timers so that you can gauge your time. We'll start with position 5. In the order that they filed for office, we'll hear first from Charlie McCaughan.
Good evening. I'm Charlie McCaughan, candidate for City Council, position 5. I'm originally from Mississippi Gulf Coast, where I attended Long Beach High School and graduated there, and then I attended Gulf Coast Community College in the same area. I started the electrical industry in 1976, and I've been in that field my entire career. I've been with electric utilities for 23 years, Mississippi Power, Port Angeles Light Operations, and now I'm with Clallam County PUD as a procurement and facility supervisor. I also administrate environmental compliance for the district, and I'm also a member of their emergency restoration team, which prepares for a catastrophic event. I transferred to Port Angeles in '94, where I was with a company called All Phase Electric, and I was a sales associate, and I've been with I was a sales associate with them, and as soon as I got here, I fell in love with Port Angeles. After that, I became a full-time resident when I married my wife Melanie in 2001. Both of her boys attended Port Angeles High School system, and we both enjoy outdoor activities like hiking and backpacking all over the Olympic Peninsula. I support Port Angeles. We both support Port Angeles High School sports, Lefties baseball, and Port Angeles Community Playhouse. We volunteered at Wanda Fuca Festival, Dungeness Crab and Seafood Festival, and we helped with the original Dream Playground. I'm running for council because I want to serve the community. I've been in public service for 15 years, and I would like to continue doing that. Our citizens deserve to have a city council that's committed and ready to make sound decisions for this community. I'm optimistic about the future of Port Angeles, McKinley opening again, and a lot of the projects that are going on, such as the downtown waterfront center, the hotel, and the restoration of the pool. And I also realize that there's issues that need addressing. We need to find a way to bring more living wages to the city, and I think that we can do that by attracting businesses that can provide these jobs to our community. Affordable housing is a concern. I feel the city's working hard on this problem, and I'd like to be a part of that process. We also need to address public safety issues to add additional sidewalks and downtown lighting and improve signage at crosswalks. I love Port Angeles and would like to be a part of the decision-making process in this city. I'm Charlie McCaughan for City Council, Position 5, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Artur Wojnowski.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out and listening to us. I'm Artur Wojnowski. I graduated from high school and continued to study architecture in the suburbs of Chicago. I moved out here about 6 years ago, and since then I've called this place my home. I'm running for city council because I want to get back to the community that has given me so much over the last 6 years. Some of the issues that I feel very strong about in this candidate race is affordable housing and jobs. And if I'm elected, I'll be hitting hard and trying to bring more business into this community and creating solutions that will make more housing available to everyone. Thank you. Please vote for me.
And last for this position 5 seat, Richard W. Doc Robinson.
Thank you. I came to Port Angeles in 2015. I had a contract at that time with the Department of Commerce, and I wanted to move from where I was. And I chose Port Angeles as a blue-collar community that I had visited years and years and years ago and enjoyed and wanted to return to. And at that time, because my work was all online, I could do so. So that contract eventually ended, and I became active in local politics, first starting with a brand new nonprofit group called PA Can, and whose purpose was to provide forums for public conversation about issues affecting everybody. The principal issue at the time was drugs. A principal issue today for all of us is still drugs in our community, and we need to continue working on this. We benefit now from something that we did not have then, which is many more treatment centers, many more places for detox, many more ways to live clean and sober afterwards. However, we still have a scourge among us. I spent today dealing with the impacts to children. Excuse me. So it's, we've got a long way to go, is all what I would also say about that. I too am very interested in dealing with housing and with jobs. I see one of the solutions to our job effort is to become better at writing grants, especially Department of Labor grants, and build job training incubation centers. For example, find the means to master lease or purchase Fanaticus, which has one of the finest kitchens in this part of the country, and use a training center there to train for two things. One is to teach people simply the work skills that so many complain that our workforce does not have, the ability to show up, be on time, follow directions, and that sort of thing. We're not looking to turn out a million cooks because we don't need a million cooks. We're looking to turn out a million people who know how to work. And in the meantime, Fanaticus can be used to compete and replace the French company that currently provides food to our schools. So we can work to build up our job group, and we can also take care of doing local investment in local people. I'm running out of time here. Affordable housing is also an issue, and the primary track that I see for that is zoning, and I'll talk about that in some detail later on. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the position 7 candidates, we'll first hear from Martha Cunningham.
Good evening. I am especially glad to be here at the League of Women Voters Forum, and running for City Council is a natural progression of what I have done in my life so far. I grew up in a family business in Eastern Washington, and I have owned several small businesses myself. Number 1 on my list of issues for the city is to grow business and attract good-paying jobs. Oh, is it on now? Okay, can you hear me now? So how do we create a city where business would want to be located? We need to provide meaningful support for infrastructure and housing, so when businesses do move here, we can keep them here. Which brings me to my next top issues, which are available housing and addiction. I know many people feel as hopeless and frustrated as I do when I drive down Lincoln Street and I see people passed out on public places. I think we need to protect those public places that hold value for the community, and we need to get people off the streets into programs where they can get some help. We can support the programs that are working and expand them. If each community group, each club, or each church would just sponsor one homeless person, we could make a huge impact. It might serve as a model for how a small town can solve its own problems. For solving the housing shortage, it's time to take more action. The council has already done an assessment about what is needed. We can reduce some of the building restrictions and we can lower the cost of permitting. We can take advantage of the House Bill 1406 and we can raise money for housing. If you vote for me for City Council, here is what I have to offer. I have had years of experience working in communities as a head teacher. I have experience as a paralegal, and I have decades of experience as an advocate. I have also served as commissioner, and I have lobbied in Olympia. I know how to work within the system and find resources and how to build a consensus. I can work with diverse groups and agencies. I have the education and experience to make balanced, careful, researched, and sound decisions. We have the energy and the will to solve our problems. I know I can contribute to these solutions, so I'm asking for your vote for Council Position 7. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Brendan Meyer.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me out here tonight. I'm 35 years old. My name is Brendan Meyer. Sorry, I'm 35 years old. I'm self-employed. I believe in entrepreneurism. I moved here with my wife and my daughter a little, roughly 2 years ago, and we researched Port Angeles. There's an entrepreneurial spirit that built this town, and I think it's still alive today. Some of the things that are really important to me are the homelessness issue, the police and fire, supporting police and fire, the housing, and the zoning issues. Now, moving here, I gave Port Angeles something very important to me, and I asked for their help, and that's raising my daughter. She's in public schools here in Port Angeles, and about 4.5 months ago, I noticed things I wasn't liking in Port Angeles. I walked downtown and there was empty storefronts. There's homeless people sleeping in front of City Hall and all around Port Angeles. So I started going and informing myself. I went to city council meetings. I went to planning commission meetings. I went to a webinar hosted by the city, and I'm the only one up here that went to this webinar, of what the municipality can actually do about the homeless problem. I believe that we need to change our zoning and our land use map, that before we even attempt to change our zoning maps. There's a lot of stuff that we can do there. Our wastewater is actually pretty well funded. There is one, except for there's a Francis Street trestle that needs to be addressed. If we have a little quake like they had in Seattle, east of Seattle, it could dislodge it and it could spill wastewater into the Peabody Creek, and that would be a hell of a lot more than fixing the trestle. Port Angeles was built on blue-collar work, and we need to emphasize on blue-collar work and entrepreneurism. We have a huge problem with housing and short-term rental problem. So people are buying houses, renting them out just for the summer, cashing out, and then it does nothing for our economy 7 months out of the year. We need to step up here. The drug problem is out of control with the homeless problem. We need to have a collaborative approach, just like we do with OpNet in our law enforcement. We need to have that with the homeless issue. We need to come together. We're out here on the peninsula together. Housing, job skills in exchange for help, and job skills in exchange for effort put forward to get well, to get off drugs, and to help you move forward in your life. And this can't be the burden of taxpayers of Port Angeles alone. It has to be a community effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will take as many questions as possible from you, the audience. Once again, all candidates will have an opportunity to respond to all questions, even those directed to a specific candidate. Candidate responses will be limited to 1 minute per question, and I expect we'll have at least 30 minutes for audience questions and candidate responses. Maybe that's more time than we need based on the audience, but I hope that many of you, all of you, will want to participate in that. You will have 30 seconds to pose your question, and the candidates will have 1 minute to answer. Please come to the microphone and state your name, or you can write down your question and pass it to a League volunteer. League member Carol Hull will hold the microphone for you or read any questions that come in on cards. If we run out of time before you have an opportunity to get your question answered, we hope all the candidates will remain after this forum so that you may speak with them directly. I'm going to kick off this part of the forum with the first question, and this is for all 5 of you. It's kind of an open-ended question. You've addressed all sorts of things, but maybe this will bring them together. Is it important that Port Angeles be viewed as an inclusive community? Is it? And what does that mean to you? Brendan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. Port Angeles should be an inclusive community. It would be ridiculous if it wasn't. I don't want to live in a place full of bigotry and hate. And if you are in that group, I suggest you find someplace else to live.
Yes, of course, it's important. I think that one of the things that brings people together is communication. And I have had a survey on my website for the past 24 hours, and people have been just constantly telling me what they think of the city and what they want the city to be like. And there's a disconnect, and I think communication is extremely important.
Doc?
In our community, we have an LGBTQ community. We have a Latino community. We have 5 tribes who are represented right here in Port Angeles. We also have a wide economic gap. And we have another group that's particularly important to me because I'm sort of a very direct person. I want to see an issue, I want to study it, and then I want to do something about it. And that's great, but there's a group here locally called the Compassion Group who've been teaching me just to listen. And that's another piece of inclusion, that's learning to listen, and learning to listen especially to people with whom we disagree.
Arthur?
I do think Port Angeles is an inclusive community. The community has included me in quite a bit of things, and I've been happy to see that, as Doc said, there is a wide range of people from all over the place, and people who are retiring and moving here, people who've been born and raised here, people who come here from across the water from Canada. I believe that the community is very important and inclusive, and I'm sorry, I forgot what's the second part of the question.
What does it mean to be an inclusive community?
And I think it just means that we all just continue to participate in the place that we all call home, and that we do the best that we can to make it better for the next generation.
Okay. Charlie?
And yes, I do believe in an inclusive community. I hate to go back to where I grew up, but that's one of the reasons I moved to this community. I loved the way it was very diverse and accepting. And when I first moved here, I didn't know what to expect. And I was welcomed with open arms. And it was like I had lived here all my life. And this is a very loving community. They're open to a lot of different ideas and people and cultures. And that's what I really love about Port Angeles. It's just a beautiful place to live. Thanks.
All right, now it's up to you. There's no one lined up over there. You have a car. All right, if you'll start it then, Carol.
All right. This question is from Laura Black, and this is what it is. The council has a certain amount of direct interaction with staff. In the past, this was sometimes moved in attempts to directly manage the staff. What do you think is the proper role of council regarding the staff?
And that's addressed to all of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's start in the middle this time then. Dot?
To tell you the truth, I'm quite uncertain. It really depends on where staff is in relation to the council. Ultimately, the council sets the city's policy and needs to take responsibility as the elected representatives of the people. However, that does not mean that council needs to be micromanaging professional paid staff who have jobs to do. For example, if you have a planning task and you turn it over to the planner, you need to get out of the way, and then you can talk again when they come back to you with their results. You don't need to be trying to influence the results along the way.
Art, will you take this next?
So I think the role of the city council is kind of a pass-through from the community to the city staff, and it's a two-way road that both the community and staff address issues with the candidates or council members. As Doc said, and I actually do agree, it's not our position to micromanage, but it is our position to make sure that the ship is being steered in the right direction and the view of the community and the concerns of the community are being addressed.
Charlie?
I've been attending council meetings for quite a few months, and previous to that we would come in occasionally and come to meetings, and I've seen a great relationship, the way the staff brings recommendations to the council and they review things the way that I see they should. They seem to follow protocol well, and I think our staff, right now the staff we have just seems unbelievably professional and well-educated and seems to bring great ideas to the council and recommendations, and I see a great relationship. Thanks.
Martha?
I believe that the city council's job is to hire the city manager, and once they do that, they need to step back and let the city manager run the city. If they don't like what he's doing, then they can hire someone else, but they should not intervene in any way, and we have a fabulous city manager right now.
Brendan?
Yeah, I agree. I do like the city manager as well. I think the job of the council is to represent the will of the people, and I think that in order to do that, we have to have a well-educated community, and that's why I'm pushing forward to increase transparency of local government. On the CFP, there's a $40,000 camera that they want to put up in the park. For half that price, we can have every city council meeting, every planning commission meeting streaming online, so the community can be well educated on what's going on in this town. And I think that would be great.
Our next question. Come on, people.
My name is Bonnie Bliss-Banish. I heard a lot of you mention something about changing zoning laws. Would you give one specific example of a zoning law that you would like to see changed?
Let's start with Martha this time.
Well, I think we have to look at that very carefully. I think we can increase density in certain zones and put more multi-housing units in there, and we can also take a look at the height restrictions that we have now.
Arthur?
Yeah, I agree. We need to look at density as well as some other factors like the size of ADUs versus the size of current home on lots. That is a big issue for those who are potentially willing to put in some money and invest into a secondary unit on their property, but they're limited to the size based on the size of the home. I think that's a good start, as well as looking at raising building heights or changing the requirements for parking on the property.
Doc, will you take this next?
So zoning in our town is an issue. It's an issue because we have commercial zoning that is not friendly to multi-use. And we are, in fact, in a sense, dictating to potential buyers what they can and cannot do. Whereas if we simply put in multi-use commercial zoning and let them decide what will work in that neighborhood, let the market decide, we will do better off. We will be better off. Right now we have properties that do not sell because they simply, nobody knows what to do with them with our commercial structure. They would probably go to residential for now and then later on flip. So I look at that particular end of it. Also then at residential reserves for purely single family houses.
Brendan, will you take this next?
Sure, I agree with everybody on the panel so far. I think the one thing is that we need to change is right now our commercial district or commercial zoning is a one-way street. So if there was a dentist office that got converted to a dentist office, it was a house. Right now there's no way for that house to be zoned residential. So we need to have a two-way street. We need to bring it back to residential.
Charlie?
I've been attending planning commission meetings, and they are working on changing some of the zoning laws, but one thing is they bring the recommendations to the city council. I've noticed they don't get much public comment. There's not a lot of people who attend the planning commissions. I would encourage people who feel strongly about the zones to attend those meetings and see what they have going. They're working very hard to try to change some of the zones, and I believe they were saying at the last meeting the land use map has to be changed first. But I know they determine zoning, they bring it forward to public comment, and then they'll bring recommendations to the city council. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Then I guess I'll have to do it again. This is something some of you, if not all of you, addressed in your opening comments, but I'd like to hear you elaborate a bit on specifics of how you would deal with it, and that's the homeless problem. Charlie, let's start with you.
Well, I appreciate the outreach programs we have here who are doing a great job at doing the best they can with the homeless and reaching out to each man and woman. I've also noticed that the police department has a program called Rediscovery, where a policeman and a trained person will go out and they actually intervene with the homeless, the men and women, and try to reach them before it becomes a crisis situation and they have to be taken to the ER or jail for something they may be doing wrong. So I think this program is making strides. I talked to the chief the other day, and he does have literature that shows the statistics and how it's working. And I just hope we can keep bringing in more types of programs like this to intervene with each man and woman out there, because they do need help. Thanks.
Brendan?
Yes, too. I also know about the Discovery program. I think it was a great program. It was a grant-based program, which grants currently have money. So I think that in order to address our homelessness problem, we need to really incentivize or have people understand that they need to, if they need to put forward effort, and we will help them. Okay? Especially since, some are drug related, some are people just down on their luck. And, in order to get a job, you need a permanent address. And we need, and studies show that housing first is what works. So we need to move in that direction, and we need to, but it can't be the tax burden of the city of the people of Port Angeles. It needs to be collaborative with the other counties in the area. It's in the comprehensive plan. It's a goal in the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Martha?
I think the homeless problem is really a huge problem. If you break it down, most of the homeless people are addicts, and that has to be addressed differently. they need treatment, and the second part is there's a shortage of low-cost housing for the rest of the people. If you're addicted to drugs, you can't even afford affordable housing. They have to have a place to stay where they can recover from the addiction first, and that's how I see the problem.
Arthur?
So I believe that it's very important that we do reach out to the homeless population, and as Doc pointed out, that he learned that we should all learn is listen and to see what the root of their problems are and to see if we can't bring them to the proper services. Hopefully if we bring them to the proper services, they'll be able to either get off of drugs or maybe reconnect and reunite with family in the area or somewhere else outside the area, and maybe that's something that we need to do, is help them reconnect with someone who can help them. And not just to have the full burden be on the city or the community as well. Thank you.
Doc?
First of all, Port Angeles does not invest $1 into the homeless problem, and that's one problem we have locally as a community. Secondly, most homeless are not, in fact, drug addicts. There are currently about 100 folks who are the unsheltered homeless, and you will see high drug use among this group. The 100 are the 100 that are still left in the streets, or any houses about 100 others. And the issue coming at us like a freight train right now is that we just got an award in Clallam County for reducing homelessness by 10% among adults and 24% among families, but the shelter is normally in the summer sees numbers of 20 and is seeing numbers averaging at 55. So and that is straight to an old rule: a $100 increase in rent leads to a 36% increase in homelessness, and that's what you're seeing today. It's not drugs, it's economics.
Thank you. Another audience question? Good thing I thought about this in advance, because usually they're lining up. Let's try this one. We often read in the newspaper mention of job growth being experienced in Clallam County, or at least the opportunities for jobs, but a disconnect with the ability to fill those jobs. Martha, let's have you take that question first.
So the question is, I'm sorry. Is job growth occurring, or the opportunity for job growth occurring? And if so, is our citizenry able to fill those jobs? I think job growth is up all over Washington, but unfortunately in Port Angeles, a lot of the jobs are not a family wage job, because they're tourist jobs or they're service jobs, restaurant jobs. We need more high-paying jobs, and we need to have more job training, and yeah, so the answer is there are jobs, but they're not high-paying enough jobs.
Charlie?
Well, I'm grateful to see McKinley coming back up and filling some more jobs in the community, which are living wage jobs. I do think we have an issue with trying to fill some jobs, such as at the hospital. We need to bring in some more skills training somehow to help fill some jobs. As far as getting living wage jobs, we need to try to work with the port to see if we can bring in some more jobs, such as boat building, forestry industry, and service jobs. It's an ongoing problem, and I hope that it starts to get better. I think McKinley's going to help a lot, but it's not going to solve the problem. Thank you.
Arthur?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are jobs in the community, but the people who want higher paying jobs refuse to take the jobs that are available at hand. We do have a shortage in jobs in terms of when you're looking around, when you're driving around, there's lots of empty buildings. And that's also a problem because we're not incentivizing people to open up businesses. We have a retiring population coming up, and I've been monitoring the pages online and in the paper, and you see buildings come up for sale or businesses for sale, but there's no one lining up to do anything about it. So we need to incentivize opportunities.
Doc?
We have lots of jobs. We have growth in low-income jobs, and we have growth in middle-income jobs, and we have growth in high-income jobs. What we don't have are the ability to attract people here to do the work, because we don't have housing and we don't have schools that will keep folks here. We also have a work ethic issue in our town that my earlier discussion about job incubators is all about going after. That said, there are a ton of jobs here that are all very low income, minimum wage. You cannot work enough minimum wage jobs to pay for housing. You can't do it in Seattle, and you can no longer do it here either. So we have to find a way to increase wages, and that's not just a local issue. You can't do these things as just the city. You need the school district to improve the schools. We need the county and other help, and the state's help to build housing. I hit the stop sign.
Thank you. Brendan?
Yeah, I want to agree with Charlie here. I think that McKinley's going to bring in some high-paying jobs to the city, but I don't think it's going to bring in that many. I think that most of those jobs are going to go to people who live in the county, and they can have a 5-minute drive into the city. And I think that is the way with a lot of jobs, because housing is expensive in the city. I know my property taxes went up this year. I'm sure everybody in this room who owns a home, their property taxes went up this year. We can't just keep taxing property owners to pay for everything in the city. We do need more high-paying jobs. I think telecommuting jobs will bring in more people. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Question?
You have a beautiful city on the waterfront here, and I haven't heard anyone say anything about climate change or the environment. I'd like to hear what all of you think about whether or not this community is going to be, or is now even being affected by that, and if so, what might be your suggestions for what to do?
Artur, will you take this first?
I'm sorry, at the moment I'm blanking. Can someone else take over? Someone else is ready?
Yeah, I can take over for you if you want me to, Arthur. Okay, yeah. I'm not a scientist, but I do believe in pollution. I know if you go and park your car in your garage, you're not going to last very long there. This whole peninsula was carved out of a glacier, which is continuously melting. It's still melting at the top of the mountains. But yeah, I think that we're doing our part. I think Washington's doing its part. I think I've actually been against plastic bags for a while, ever since I heard about a whale that 150 years old, they cut them open and stomach was full of plastic bags. So I've been using paper bags for a while. Yes, I believe climate change is a problem. I don't know what the city council can do about it, but yes, I'm with you.
Arthur, are you ready now?
Yes, thank you for that brief pause. So yeah, I was racking my brain about it. I know that the city installed some windmills, which were definitely a hot topic before. The city is trying, I think, to steer towards consciousness of the environment. I don't know how much more the city can really do without taxing taxpayers and putting projects similar to that on the books, but I think education should be the biggest part on the city and making sure that the residents are the ones who help with that subject. Low flow water, more efficient appliances, things that the community can do as a whole versus just the city itself.
Doc?
So first off, our city does not have the money to do the kinds of things that we could do, but the list of things that we could do and the situations we face. Last summer we had a smoke emergency. That was smoke coming over from BC and getting trapped against our mountains. Soon we will have our own smoke emergency as it becomes warmer and drier. That forest up there is based on a different water balance, and sooner or later it will light. And we will have our own smoke problem. We're going to have a watershed problem as well. We don't have places to store water, and it's not going to stay as snow melt the way it once did. We have a growing population. We have a growing population with low jobs, and where we're getting it from is a lot of it's from immigration. Every time there's a fire in a place like Paradise, we get new California immigrants. And they're Americans. They have every right to move here, but we're going to have to deal with it and build for it. I'll stop there because I'm getting the buzzer.
Charlie?
I think the city and the state of Washington are very conscientious about the climate change, and you know, they do everything they can as far as trying to keep our water clean and being prepared for a catastrophic event which could be caused by climate change. I also think the city needs to continue to look at clean green options when they're contracting services or buying products, and always think about giving conservation incentives to our residential and commercial, and especially the industrial customers we have. The environment means a whole lot to me, and you know, that's one of the whole reasons I love this area is clean air. You hear visitors come in from out of state, and they'd say, man, the air is just so clean here, and it's just something we can all be proud of. So thanks.
Martha?
Well, the city council was asked, Lizzie can probably attest to that, they were asked to come up with a climate plan, and they're working on it for 2019. And it is trying to address the three main issues, which are the snowpack level and the shoreline management and the air quality, which we can't do too much about because it's a lot of times the forest fires are coming from Canada. But they are working on it, as well as the emergency preparedness program, which is probably even more imminent. And it should come out in 2019, this year.
Next question.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Thank goodness I don't have to do that job. Within this past year, I believe, I may have my time frame wrong, we have had two very serious, at least two very serious murders with guns. So my question is, what are your thoughts on gun safety legislation? And is there something that we can do at the local and state level?
Arthur, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, I am a very big supporter of the Second Amendment, and it is sad when we have people using firearms to commit crimes and murders and anything else that law-abiding citizens would otherwise use their firearms for. In terms of what we could do locally, I'm not quite sure, other than maybe help educate our residents in maybe proper storage, but we want to be careful about how we try to regulate people's ability to use their Second Amendment for safety, for recreational shooting. The firearm is just a tool. It's the people who need to be educated on how to use the tool properly.
Doc?
Well, I couldn't disagree more. First of all, the Second Amendment doesn't extend rights in the way that it's currently defined, and that will eventually be decided. But the main one is when you see a crisis of people being gunned down on a regular basis, whether it's in our community with small numbers or in other communities with huge numbers, you begin to do something about the tool. One of the simplest things is that there's been no effort to pass a law limiting the ability of people with mental health issues and other kinds of issues, other things that have shown them to be a chronic problem. And that's sort of first on the list. That's the low-hanging fruit. Others are more complex, and building the strength of an anti-gun coalition back to where it was in the 50s when I was raised, where people like my family, all veterans, all gun owners, knew there were rules.
Thank you. Charlie?
We live in an area that's very big on gun ownership. We have a lot of hunters here and outdoorsmen, and I just look at gun control as a federal issue. We have laws on the books that control that, and I'm not sure what we could do as a city council as far as listening to recommendations that are brought to us. So, thanks.
Martha?
I talked to Chief Smith about crime in general in Port Angeles, and he told me that 95% of all crime in Port Angeles is drug related. And certainly the crime that happened this year was drug related. And so I think it would behoove us to work on that first.
Brendan?
Yeah, I am a firm believer, and I like my guns. I like to go out and shoot. I think we need to have sensible gun control, but I haven't seen that, and I know the recent law passed in Washington was not sensible, and it just was for more litigation. It's going to get struck down. So yeah, I want to see sensible gun control, but I enjoy shooting. I go out to the National Forest with my wife, and we just unload some rounds and come back home. So sensible gun control.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
I'll time myself.
Go ahead.
You've alluded to the housing shortage, and I'd like to know, my daughter would like to move here, but she can't find a place to rent. And I live in the county, and we had a tear down that went on sale, darn, 17 offers, sight unseen. That's crazy.
So what is the question?
My question is, what are you going to do about housing?
All right. This one we'll start with Martha.
Well, what we can do about housing is we can make it easier for builders to build. It's really hard for them right now, and it's way too expensive. It costs about $36,000 just to get the permits to start building a house, to get the sewer and septic permits. And per square foot, it's way above what it costs anywhere else. And it takes too long, the process is too long, there's too many restrictions. So that's the first thing we can do. We can take advantage of the Emerald Opportunity Zone federal program and get some more housing through that. And we can also take advantage of we could pass the tax bill that we're thinking about passing that will bring more money into the city for low-cost housing. So those are some of the things we need to do.
Brendan?
Yeah, I think what Elaine's talking about is indicative of our market growing out of control. It's great to have your house go up in value, but I think one of our biggest problems here, especially in Port Angeles, is the short-term housing problem. So, like I said, houses will sit vacant 7 months out of the year. That also reduces availability of houses, and it also makes the market go up. I would like to see, and Victoria did something similar recently, and they've fixed their problem of skyrocketing housing costs and availability. So, let's take lessons from other places and see how they would work here if they work.
Doc?
Well, first off, I agree with Martha. You have to streamline the beginning process. It costs way too much money to get started here. I also believe we can do a better job as a community in coming up with community solutions. This is me. I get to talk forever. Now, community solutions that will help builders deal with stormwater and this. And they do exist when done as a community, rather than putting the burden just on the developer. We also have to get flexible in what we think of as housing. So, and we're not very good at this. It's long been on the market. You can have cargo texture. This is the use of cargo containers as houses. And for $43,000, I can ship one in from Australia that's a 4-bedroom designer house. And all I need is a slab and utilities to put it down on. And it's time to start thinking outside the box and move quickly. Stick-built is great, but you don't have to do stick-built. You can do prefab. There's a wonderful company down in Vancouver, Box something, and they are quite good at building multifamily prefab units. They come in and set it up, and you're good to go. We need to get faster.
Charlie?
One thing that's really hurting the rental property is the Airbnb business. You know, it's people would rather take their home and rent out a room or their home for a night or a weekend and make just as much doing that as they could for bringing in renters for a month or so, and their house is taken better care of, in their opinion. But I do agree with the State Bill House Bill 1406. If the voters approve that, I think that could bring in some funding to create grants and bring in some more affordable housing. In addition, the Planning Commission has been working on this problem very hard. They're working on incentives to developers and builders to see if they can reduce this problem. It's going to be, I believe they're bringing some recommendations to the council as early as September. And I think a couple of them are multifamily housing tax exemptions, lot variances, being a little more lenient on those. And it looks like they're really trying hard, you know, and it's just a long process. Thank you.
Arthur?
So I think that we should be working more closely with developers to see what it is that would incentivize them to come out here and build. At the same time, we should be looking to see what we could ease and maybe change in terms of whether it's zoning, whether it's code, or even now that the state of Washington passed, I don't remember exactly what it is, but towards the tiny home communities. We should be looking at available options to the community. For example, someone builds a tiny home and now uses that for Airbnb, as opposed to using a house that leaves one spot for someone else to rent for long term. If we have more solutions like that, where we could use a balanced approach and finding different options, that would be the best. Because no one solution is going to be right for every individual problem that pops up.
Thank you. Our next question.
Hi, Renee Reed. Thank you all for participating in this forum. It's really important to those of us who vote. I wanted to kind of circle back to the question asked by the moderator about making Port Angeles an inclusive city, if you think it's important or not. And maybe you can all tell me how you yourselves have been fostering this inclusive atmosphere while you've lived here. And I think it's important because we need to work together as a community. Council members need to work together.
I think the question was, what are you personally doing about the inclusiveness issue? Is that right? Let's start with Doc.
So this is part of my work, and recently when I arrived here and was asked to take over Serenity House, we lacked a youth program. With counts that are out there, there are approximately 500 youth who are living outside of their home. Inclusiveness among them is that they are the earlier communities I mentioned, LGBTQ, all 5 tribes, the Latino community. These folks are overrepresented among homeless youth. So we're including in the wrong way. They are more disadvantaged. So my work has been about finding ways to solve this problem for them, to help them rejoin society, to find safe and stable homes, to get the education, the vocational training that they need to succeed in life. We cannot replace parents who have gone AWOL. What we can do is provide them a path to get started in life and give them a good start.
Martha?
Well, what I do what I do in Port Angeles is I volunteer for the CASA program, and I come in contact with a wide range of people, and many of them are homeless, many of them are drug addicted parents, and the community I came from before this was much more diverse, but that's what I do here. I volunteer for CASA, and I feel that helps me get a perspective on everything that's going on outside of in my neighborhood and elsewhere.
Brendan?
Yeah, I go around and I just talk to everybody. I think it's important to communicate with people. It's something I do if I'm talking to somebody at the grocery store. Communication's huge. This weekend I stood out in front of the fountain for about 6 hours with a red chair and a green chair, a talking chair and a listening chair. And I just listened to people and their concerns. And I talk to people and tell them my ideas. So I think communication's huge in inclusiveness. I drop my daughter off for Taekwondo sometimes, and then I go and just walk and talk to people. So yeah, the communication's huge for inclusiveness. Thank you.
Charlie?
Well, sometimes I think my wife will agree, sometimes I kind of talk to people too much. I enjoy communicating with people, especially tourists. We walk our dogs around town a lot in downtown area. I like being receptive to all people, saying hello and trying to welcome them to our community, and answering questions about what's going on in the community. And I just love communicating with people. It's just part of the way I've always been, and I love that. I just wish people could be more communicating instead of social media. But I do appreciate people who visit in our city. Thank you.
Arthur?
So I personally attempted to include everyone in the community. I joined Peninsula Area Public Access, our local TV station here, and I tried to start a news program to help people who like to watch TV and want a local news program. I started that. I tried to get information out to the people. I tried to ask questions and talk with people and listen to what they had to say. And I currently am the president on the board, and I do the same thing. I listen and I talk to people who show up and see how they can have their voices heard on TV and seen on TV as well. The biggest part, I think majority of the candidates, is communication is the number one thing.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Well, then I'm going to exercise my prerogative again, because there's one thing that I haven't heard you refer to, and I think it's important, and that is what should the city's relationship with the school district be? Do you think there's enough cooperation, or would you do things differently? Let's start with Martha on this one.
Well, since I'm a former teacher, I guess my opinion is educators do education the best. But I think that the whole community can ask things of the schools, because they're on the front lines. Like, for instance, the behavioral health people have gone to the high school and said, please, would you institute a drug program? And they ended up hiring drug counselors, because it's very important to be proactive in the community, and the schools can do a lot for that.
Charlie?
That's a tough question. I would like to see more, the last levy they had for the school, which would help bring the school up to better standards, was not passed, and I think that would be a start, just trying to get the school up to standards and in better condition. I heard a lady mentioning that to me today, that, she even asked me, what can you do about the schools? And it's kind of up to the voters, how that's handled. I'm not sure how the city council could bring that relationship together, and I don't know what to say. Thank you.
Arthur?
So I think what the city can do is just share the information that it has with the school district, information, statistics, concerns, and basically let the relationship work that way in communication. But when it comes down to it, we're not really sure exactly how much the city can do. Yeah, I think that's all I can really think of at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan?
Okay, yeah. So moving from where we moved to a couple years ago, I'm super satisfied so far with the schooling my daughter's got. I sat in on the school board meeting 2 nights ago. It was really refreshing to hear the cooperation that's going on with the tribes. They're trying to do collaborative efforts. I think the flexibility that Port Angeles School District works with the homeschooling community is great. Homeschooling kids can go and take their general stuff at home and then go to the public school for electives. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. And if there's anything I can do to help the school board as a city council person, I sure as hell will.
Doc?
Yes, the school board is very active. The schools are reaching out to the tribal communities. They're gaining social services. They have a school-based health center now. We want to continue to grow these activities. But the question was what we can do as a city council for the school. And in this case, I think primarily is to be a cheerleader. We're going to see another initiative to come up on the school district taxing, and I think it's incumbent upon all of the members of the City Council to get out there as cheerleaders for this and make it happen. We know the importance of this to our community. We know it's important to our kids, first off. We know it's important to our business community. We know it's important to attracting labor. We know it's important at every level, and it's our job to get out there and not just as individuals, but to pass a resolution and get out there as a group and stand out there and make a little noise in our community. Thank you.
Well, that will conclude our questions, and I'm now going to go to the closing statements. We'll reverse the order from the opening statements and begin with the 2 candidates for the position 7 seat. First, Brendan Meyer, you have 1 minute.
I'm going to leave you with a quick story of a woman, since we're here at the Women's League of Women Voters. Born in 1863 in Versailles, Indiana, came to Port Angeles in 1897, got groceries on credit, built a restaurant, established Mary Mere Tavern in 1906, built the Rosemary Inn with Mary Dunn, John Dunn in 1914. She was a single mother when she came here. She was an entrepreneur, and now I live in her house. Her name was Rose Littleton.
Thank you. Martha Cunningham?
It isn't just the natural beauty of Port Angeles that's unique and awesome, it's also the people. They're a high-spirited group of people. I see this kind of community spirit as our resource. We can get things done. We can bring in more business and job development, and this town could be the envy of the peninsula. I would like to bring my experience and skills to City Council to further these goals. I have a clear vision of how these goals can be met, and I'm asking you to vote for me for position number 7. Thank you.
Doc Robinson?
I'm asking for your vote tonight. My focus, my primary focus here at this end is going to be on jobs. We are a place where everybody wants to live. Look up the hill, look across the water, look at all the nature that we have. We now need to make this a wonderful place to work. We have everything we need. We can attract employers. We just have to get out of our own way, a lot less talk, a lot more do, and it's okay to make mistakes as we go forward. Because right now what we need more than anything else is development, so that we have money, so that we can change schools, so that we can reduce homelessness, so that we can build houses, and onward. It all starts with building an economic engine, and this place has everything you need to bring in the entire database industry here to work, because it's paradise. Thank you.
Thank you. Artur and Wojnowski?
Thank you everyone for coming out and listening to us again. I'm a self-employed individual, but I've also worked most of my life with other people as well, being employed. I have a lot of experience in both self-employment and being employed, and I really see employment and housing as the biggest issues for this community. If you vote for me, I'm going to work hard personally to contact businesses, not only in the area, but outside of this community, Seattle, Spokane. You know, we got to look everywhere to see where the opportunities lie for other businesses to expand and try and marry the relationship between what we have here and what people might be enticed by to come out here and start a business or expand. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Charlie McCaughan?
I've been in public service for over 15 years, and I love serving the public. I'm ready to transition my life to continue this, and I also would really appreciate you allowing me to put in all the dedication and time it allows to do this position properly. I'm open-minded, I believe in transparency to the public, and I would work very hard for the citizens of this community. I realize we have a lot of complicated issues that face us, but I think with a collaborative effort with the city and all of the organizations and outreach programs we have available, that we can take care of these issues at hand. I'm Charlie McCaughan, running for City Council Position 5, and I would appreciate your votes. Thanks.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank you for running for office and for participating in this forum. Before we close, are there any candidates for other offices in the audience this evening? If so, would you stand and introduce yourself? There are other officers that have been elected that are here, I know. But no one that's a candidate. All right, well, thank you. This is the time when we give our candidates our round of applause, but then remain seated after that because I have a few more things to say. Two things that I want you to have in your hands as you leave. The evaluation form that you were given, it will be very helpful to us in planning future forums. If you'll take a moment to fill this out, it'll only take you a moment or two. And the other thing is, if you do not already have a copy of the directory that the League produces each year, this is very helpful to have all year round, but now as election time is coming, it's a good resource. So pick up a They Represent You at the table if you don't have one. Thank you to our timers. Thank you to Tim, our videographer. Thank you to the League members who helped put on this forum. And thank you, our audience, for your informed and limited but informative questions. I encourage all the candidates to stick around if you want to talk with them one-on-one about any issue. Ballots will be mailed on July 17th, and they must be postmarked or dropped in a drop box by August 6th, which is the election day. Please remember to vote. Remind your neighbors and family members to vote, and thank you again for coming.
I'd like to thank our moderators.